Welcome to the news and more. Today we have two psychologists and a teacher, and we're going to be talking about adolescence. And I want to welcome you to Dr. Charwing Lowe, and she is licensed in Michigan, a psychologist. Her clinical interests include identifying development and empowerment. She works with clients from diverse backgrounds regarding age, gender, nationality, race, religion, sexual orientation, and social economics. She also addressed depression, anxiety, sleep problems, eating disorders, and different problems of that nature. Next, we have Dr. Nicole Hubie, psychologist. Dr. Hubie is a clinical psychologist with a wide range of experience and over 20 years of service. Then we have here Kevin. How do you pronounce the last name? I'm so sorry.
Nellum.
Okay. He's a teacher in Detroit. That's physics education?
Yeah.
Okay. A podcast and a voice for Detroit teachers as the host of his independent and Black-owned podcast.
Yeah, absolutely. And just a quick correction, I'm a teacher in Detroit. So shout out to the D. What up, though?
Okay.
Thank you so much for having me on the podcast. Thank you so much. And the radio. Thank you. So my name is Calvinnellum. You can find me at Teach Simple on Teach Simple 28. And just look up Teach Simple, you'll find me. So absolutely. So I'm like 29 years old, so I'm actually a millennial. And so I'm kind of like a middle child. So I can relate to the younger generation, but also the elders. And so I always come in with a lot of empathy, a huge amount of empathy. When I am in a class and I feel like it's boring, I look at my kids and I'm like, oh man, they probably think this is boring too. And so it's just really putting myself in their shoes, understanding how they differ, and using that to help them be more engaged, help them feel more empowered, help them feel more encouraged. Right. But it all starts with empathy.
Okay. So I want to ask you, Mr. Calvin, I'm going to call you Calvin, so I don't want to mess up your last name again. What is adolescence, and how do you help students get through that in school when they have problems with maybe not having the right sources at home, or not having a father figure at home, not having the help they need to get them through school?
Yeah, absolutely. Right. So I get this from my brother Calvin T. Mann of the Emmy Way. He says it's engagement. So you got to get the kids' attention, right? So if I'm a teacher and I'm teaching physics, I got to make sure I started with a bunch of energy. So I say, what's up, Calvin? Excuse me, what's up, class? It's Calvinnellum. We have the STEM class. I'm so excited to be with y'all, right? And then the next part is empowerment, right? And that empowerment, it's called Teach Simple. So I feel like you get a lot of empowerment when you think you don't know how to do something, but then you learn it. And so I get kids to learn about black body radiation. I get kids to learn about that physics, right? I push them, right, to the limits as much as I can. And then the last piece is encouragement, right? And so when they give me a little bit of energy that they wasn't giving me before, I emphasize that. And I say, okay, I see you, Narlin. Okay, keep pushing, right? Okay, all right, I see you, Bevan. I see, So engagement and empowerment and encouragement. And you just do that, constantly. You're going to help those kids who are suffering from disparities like fatherlessness or poverty, right? Because you're getting their attention. You're showing them love, and you're showing them that anything's possible.
Okay. All right. So, Dr. Lowe, I would like to ask you the same thing. What is adolescence, and what are the 3 stages of adolescence? And also, is there a late stage of adolescence? And I believe I read something that says from 18 to 20, or is it 21?
So adolescence, generally, we think of it in terms of from age 13 till, I would say 19, right? I know that, I don't know if what you're talking about is they call it adolescent now.
Okay.
So meaning they're adult but act like adolescents. So it's another later stage. Although what that is that the difference really from me is from the cognitive perspective. That is an age where they're no longer a child. They are more capable of engaging in complex thinking. But their brain is not fully developed yet. So they're in that awkward phase. And one of the questions that you have shared with me is that why is it that they are rebellious during this time?
Yes, that's
my response to that is that it's not quite they are rebellious, but it's that they're testing out boundaries. With this new ability, they want to see what they can do with it. And so what can be helpful for adults that are working or living with adolescents to understand this is what is happening to them cognitively,
right.
and to expect that, and to provide a safe environment for them to be able to explore. And that is very crucial for their development.
Right. Okay.
Yes.
All right. So let's say we live in the times we're living in now. It's not like when I was coming up. Things are more crucial. Maybe kids is having more problems with depression, anxiety, self-esteem, going through this adolescence stage. Dr. Lowe, how do you handle that? You know, is it where you have to give them, you dealing with talk therapy? Do it include, or do it have to be just giving them some kind of medication to help work them through these stages right now?
I think similar to what Kevin had mentioned is that this is a time that they need a lot of encouragement because they're trying to figure out who they are.
Right.
So that is usually the beginning. And then I tend to, if I were to work with adolescents, I like to also work with adults because they are the ones that get to shape the environment for them. I don't go home with the teen, right? It's the adult that go home with the teen. And sometimes it's the parents or the adults in their life, they don't know how to help this child. And so by giving the adults some information, some tools, it will work better for them at home. And then the teen has the adult to go to guide them through that process. So sometimes I'll work that way. And as far as medication, we psychologists do not prescribe medication. So if that is, we think that might be helpful, we will refer them to a psychiatrist for evaluation.
Oh, I like that. I like the idea that you incorporate the family, whoever the family is, the mother, the father, or both, you know. Okay, I like that. So hello, Dr. Nicole Hubie. How are you?
Hello, and thank you for having me, and hello to my colleagues as well.
Okay, my answers to you, what is adolescence and how do you help children work through the stages? Because the stages of adolescence from 11 to 14, from 15 to 17, and then also we know how, like she said before, I didn't realize when children around 11, 12, or 13, some of them go through a hard time through adolescence, and they are very rebellious. You know, a lot of times they rebel and they get in, you know, disrespectful with their mouths, maybe think that they're real grown or whatever. So how do you handle that with a parent with that child?
Well, that is a huge question. And with raising a child, I'm sure you've heard the saying, it takes a village, you know, but also in remembering that it takes a village, also know that there are lots of influences coming into your child's mind, lots of television, people. And so it's good to have a positive parent there or guardian or caretaker who is, like my colleague, Mr. Nellum said, showing empathy. And like my colleague, Dr. Lowe says, you know, who knows that, wait a second, there's some cognitive development going on here. So how do we help shape that? I called in because it's so much of a need to try to impress positive things on children and help them launch. And I have one of my favorite art pictures up. It's called The Banjo Lesson, and it's by Henry Tanner. And it's from 1893, and it's showing some mentorship. It's showing, some teaching there. And so I think that, that as an adolescent is developing and, they're having maybe in the early stages physical growth, and then they're going to go through puberty where, they have increased interest. They're going to have an increased drive for independence. Their cognition is expanding. They're going to learn things increasingly about delaying gratification and stabilizing their emotions and planning for the future. And, all of these developmental cognitive milestones occur, even growing hair under their arms and voice deepening, those sort of things. It's important to help through those stages by speaking with the adolescent or giving them some sort of way to learn about what's going on and make good choices. And that can be done a number of ways depending on the environment.
Okay.
For example, you may have a single parent home. You may have grandparents raising the child. You may not have, your typical 2-parent family, but that doesn't mean the child is doomed. That doesn't mean that they won't grow up to be whole, responsible citizens. But there are, when you pay attention to what the needs are and what any deficits or lack may be, then you feel that in positive ways by having an excellent teacher in the Detroit schools who's going to be an example for that young male, and they will model after him,
That's true.
For example.
And he's like a father figure.
I think,
For some of the for some of the children in the school that don't have a father, he's like a father figure, or a male figure for them.
And it's so good to see.
Okay, I want to ask you this, Dr. Hubie. What are some of the tips to help with raising young males?
Is it for me or Dr. Nicole?
Dr. Nicole Hubie.
We can definitely all chime in on this.
That's a big question.
Yeah,
It is.
it's a big question.
Okay.
It's definitely a big question, and there's so many ways to approach it. I think again, though, having that empathy that Mr. Nellum spoke about, having building trust, and being cognizant of where that young male is in development, in confidence, in their approach to life, so you can reach them. Some may have great examples and great foundations, and others may need help in certain areas. So meeting them where they are is important. But I would definitely like to hear the lone man in the room.
Yes, Kevin.
Comment on this for sure.
Not only that, later on, anybody can jump on this here. What can we say to the team who has no father? And I believe we probably talked a little bit about it, but it was broad and to narrow in, because I just want to say this right fast. Children that have father figures with both parents, they do better in school. They do better probably in society than and going through adolescence and and not even going into the prison to the school to prison pipeline as well. What do you all say about that? Who want to go first? Well, Kevin, you was going to talk. Go ahead.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so I would say the three things, especially when you're talking about raising a black child or black male in America, is that they need to have discipline, consistency, and someone to relate to. And generally, we never have all three at once, right? So for me, I grew up with a single mother. My mother had a master's degree plus 30, so I had all the resources, right? So she was able to put me in summer camps every summer where I could see that black male preacher doing Bible with us, but also teaching us the book on Thursdays, right? And also I was able to play basketball, which taught me discipline, right? And so that consistency, that schedule, right? Video games is a really big issue, especially for young black males, because that's something we do every day, but what skills are we practicing, right?
Social skills, yeah, too.
Right, exactly. You know what I mean? And so that discipline piece is key, right? But the consistency, right? As a teacher, I learned that, but the relatability is really important, right? And so having someone to relate to. So my brother was incarcerated, dropped out of high school real early, right? But because he was closer to me, right? He had that. He was a peer group of mine. I will always look up to him because he was relatable. Unfortunately, he was a master of self-sabotage, right? And a lot of our black males, we have masters of self-sabotage that unfortunately are in our environment that we just inherently look up to, depending on the context, depending on the situation. And even though those values and those gems that you might get from your uncle, right, they're still struggling with their own trauma themselves, right? And so what are we really passing down? And so we have to make sure that we have discipline, consistency, and relatability and positive role models that are going to make sure we have a constructive environment instead of a destructive one.
Okay, Dr. Lowe, dealing with culture. Right now I see we talking about a little bit about males, and then we talked about black males here. Well, in different cultures, the way parents raise their children is not all the same. And some kids, their development, their stages of going through adolescent, dealing with an environment, dealing with emotions, dealing with self, is different. Like the Chinese children, or Arab child, or African American child, or a white child. Isn't it like a somewhat like when they come to you, the problems or life challenges are somewhat different? Or is it the same?
I think that's for me.
Yes,
right?
Dr.
Yeah,
Charween.
Right. So I would say that the parents may come from different places. The common thing is that their child, we can have the hyphenation American, right? Whether it's Arab American or a Chinese American, the child is here. And so I often remind parents that we're not going to parent from our past. Oftentimes people will think that I was raised this way, so I'm going to raise my child this way. I ask them to parent their child for the future. The job of a parent is to prepare the child for their world, not for our world.
I like that.
Right,
yes.
right. And so it doesn't, in a way, where we came from matters, but we also need to prepare the child for the world that they're going to be in. So that's how we will start from there, and then think about, given what your child need to be successful down the road, 10 years from now, 20 years from now, what can we do for them? And that's where the conversation begins.
So that sounds like mutual understanding. Have a mutual
Yes.
understanding there. Because
Right.
like in contrast with other cultures besides African American cultures, I'm just saying, because they always say there's not a lot of fathers in the African American culture, and kids don't do so fairly well when they come up, most kids. So in contrast, Chinese cultures stresses what you call I'm trying to say the word is instrumental support. Like they really support their children through like education and different things. They do a lot of sacrificing to make sure these kids get where they should be. Am I
Yes.
saying this? Am I saying it right? Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yes, that is true to some extent, and then to know that there is also a price the child pays. So there's a lot of guilt, a lot of owing the parents for the sacrifice they make, and then to begin with, they didn't ask the parents to make the sacrifice. So then it comes with a lot of guilt, and then parents want the child because I've sacrificed so much for you. You then have to do what I want you to do. So there's now a lot of freedom in that, and that can then also create parent-child conflicts.
And you know, with other cultures, like you go again with Chinese Americans, it's a stress on them with society saying that you have to be super smart, you have to know math, you have to know this, you have to be so much different than other people. Now, an adolescent person going through that's a lot of stress there, it seems like.
It is.
Okay.
And it's a social construct as well that you will see that in many other cultures that we feel in black men, like a black man, we have social constructs, right? In the Asian community, different social constructs, right? But it's a construct, and it doesn't mean that is finite or the rule. You know, you can deviate from it, like Dr. Lowe said. We want to prepare them for the future, not the present, because that's what we're going to be living in.
Okay. Also, I want to ask you all, what are the 5 leading characteristics of adolescence? Again, could anyone express that to me?
I know they got to be a teenager, right?
Go on. Anyone?
I'm gonna pass it to my experts in the room, but
So I have here from my reading, the 5 leading characteristics of adolescence are biological growth, development and identifying status, increased decision making, increased pressures, and searching for self. You know, going through the adolescent stage. And to me, that is kind of hard when you don't have the proper, again, if you don't have the proper adult in your life to help you go through these stages, searching for self, letting you know that you're special, you know.
I think I understand what you're asking. And there is like a role confusion versus finding their identity. And somehow, many times, that's how that stage of development has been described as, you know, one of the key markers of the, psychological challenge of an adolescence is to find their identity and not be confused about their role. And of course, having good examples, good mentors, positive family members, great coaches, and that sort of thing all helps with that. But when you have a situation where the example hasn't been good, the role model was negative. The role model was inconsistent. There was some problem there. That can lead many adolescents in to seek the therapy or need the therapy or maybe even become rebellious. And that's where the treatment prayerfully comes in, you know.
Okay. All right. Anyone else want to elaborate?
That was a good answer.
Okay. Would you guys give your information again? I want the people to give where you work at, the phone number where people can reach you. Can we do that?
Yeah, go ahead. I'll go after my the queens. Go ahead.
Okay. Okay. I'm sorry. All right.
Dr. Hubie, would you like to go first?
Sure. The best way to reach me is through email, inquiry@drhubie.com. Inquiry@drhubie.com. So that's INQUIRY@DRHU, B as in Bravo, Y at .com. So inquiry@drhubie.com.
Okay. Next person.
Best way to reach me is also through the email, and that is info@drlowinannarbor.com. info@drlowinannarbor.com. And that's info@drlowinannarbor.com.
Okay. Anything else you want to give the listening audience?
Yeah, I just want to say thank you so much. My name is Calvinnellum. I am a teacher, podcaster, physics, and now math teacher in Detroit. I'm a podcast called Teach Simple. We focus on providing simple solutions in the classroom. It's an amazing, amazing podcast. I interviewed some of my students. I'm interviewing entrepreneurs this week for Black History Month. You can find me at teachsimple28, teachsimple313@gmail.com, or teachsimple313.com. Thank you all so much.
Okay. Now, anyone else want to go into just letting the audience know a little more about the adolescent stage? Each person, just have your way right now.
Yeah, I just want to say, it's okay. It's okay to not be good at, a lot of parents are, educators right now, right? Because you're teaching. It's okay. Just understand that building that relationship with your scholar and learning how they learn and learning how they just act is way more important than you get. You got to get the work done, but build that relationship. Start with those relationships first, right? No, figure out how your scholar learns. Figure out how your scholars read. I would highly recommend people look up Dr. Howard Gardner's 7 habits of, the multiple intelligence, right? There's 7 multiple intelligence. Figure out which intelligence your scholar has, and then tailor your instruction, your education, your homeschooling, whatever you're doing to supplement your scholar education. Use that as leverage to make sure that they're successful.
Okay. The next person.
Dr. Hubie, would you like to go first?
Yeah, I just have such a passion for the youth, and it's, I think, instilling in the youth that you encounter confidence, a positive word, can go a long way. We sometimes don't get the opportunity to have a 12 or more session therapy.
Okay.
But there are ways we can influence the youth by telling them, they're cared for, telling them that you're there for them, being honest and truthful when speaking with them, even when there's an inconsistency, but just letting them know that you want what's best for them, and maybe giving them examples. I think that goes a long way in reaching the youth and helping them get to the point where when they're making independent decisions, they make good decisions. And a lot of that can come from giving them some foundational tenets, um, instilling in them, make good choices, be honest, be a reader. Many people also have religious beliefs where there are tenets to follow and believe that are helpful.
So, in your counseling, do any you all bring up spirituality to the children? A lot of kids don't know anything about spirituality, and then others do. And so, do you allow that to be in your counseling sessions? Do you incorporate it some kind of way?
I do. I meet the children where they are, and respect their family and their beliefs, of course.
Okay.
Yes.
So you have to get permission from maybe from the parents and when you do a background assessment with the counselors, you guys have to get that assessment to find out if it's okay to incorporate spirituality. Because it seems to me that will kind of help kids through emotional problems as well.
I certainly think it's important, but I also just always respect the parents' beliefs system and wanting to reach the child. I definitely have my own personal beliefs, and but I think that there are ways to reach the child and maybe not necessarily indoctrinate them a certain way, but help them problem solve if there's a need for the therapy, or just general counseling.
Hold on for a minute. I think someone is trying to call in. Wait a minute. She's not calling in. Okay. All right then. Okay, go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Dr. Hubie.
Yeah, that was my thought on it. In reaching a child, you want to pay attention to who's in the household with them. You want to pay attention to what that person's availability would be, emotionally and physically and financially. You want to, in reaching the child in a therapeutic situation, you want to get a sense of what their resources are. And you want to get a sense of how to reach them that way. Of course, give some assistance if you can in meeting the needs of the family. But you want to, again, meet them where they are and then help them go forward. And there's so many ways to do that in a therapeutic situation.
Okay, so Dr. Lowe, I want to know, like she was talking about many ways in a therapeutic situation to help children and to meet their needs. I'm sorry. Also, I think we talked about it a little earlier, how if a kid come to you and you want to see why they having, whatever problem it may be, 1, 2, 3, 4, whatever, and you look at it and say, is this environmental, something, outside, or is this, like you talked about social economics, or is it dealing with just going through the adolescent stage? Is it biological? You guys search all of that out.
Yes.
Okay.
Is it a question?
Pardon me.
There's usually like a referral question for the child who comes into therapy. Um, they could be referred by the courts. They could be referred by the school system. A family member could come in and want therapy. There could, so uh, there are lots of ways that an adolescent could come into the therapeutic situation.
Yeah, I know that part. But I was talking about like when children have problems, sometimes it may not be biological. It may not be just them going through the adolescent stage. It's hard to transition into that. It could be some outside forces, like I call it, outside environmental, the peer pressure or whatever,
Okay.
and that they don't know how to go through it. They don't know how to get through it. You see what I'm saying? And where some psychologists may say, well, maybe they're having such a hard time. Maybe we need to refer them where they need medication. But really, it's not that. It's environmental. It's this things that's happening.
I see.
Do you see what I'm saying?
I think I understand what you're saying, and I think that's where trust in the relationship with the adolescent comes in. Like I think Mr. Nellum has said, they need someone to relate to. And I think if you build a rapport with the adolescent, then they may be able to tell you what the problem is or what the environmental pressure is, and then maybe you can help solve it. I think one of the fears that I have for children or for adolescents is that sometimes you just may not know that this is what they're thinking, or you may not know that they're having a problem, and just trying to get to a child. Like, for example, you mentioned that one might become rebellious, and you're wondering why. That the family may wonder what's going on with that adolescent, and you may find out years and years later, prayerfully not, that they were being bullied in school, but you never found out about it.
Oh, yes.
Or they were having like you said, some sort of outside environmental pressure. So that's why I think that one of in raising an adolescent is so important, to try to have that trusting relationship where you can talk to them and not just, oh, how are you? I'm fine. But more so, what did you learn today? What was your, what challenge did you have today?
What I like that. But you have to teach
today?
now. You may have parents that don't know how to communicate with their kids like that because they never had anyone to communicate with them like that, to sit down and talk to the child, through this growing up stage. Don't know how to communicate with their children, and so the kid then. Mr. Calvin, then if you in school and you have a boy, girl, and they withdrawn, and she was saying something about peer pressure or bullying, that was it, and then you see that child is withdrawn and may not be doing very well in school because of maybe they was bullied, maybe through low self-esteem. How do you deal with that too?
Yeah, absolutely. So you always want to make sure you go to the social worker, go to the professional that is, able to handle those skills, right? So as a teacher, I'm definitely like a mental health advocate. I'm here to support, and I teach my content area. But one thing that Dr. Kwanzaa Kunjufu says in his book, The Conspiracy to Destroy Black Boys, is that the larger influencer for adolescent males is their peer group. Right, and it changes when they're from younger, right? So they were saying, you remember when you was getting good grades, and then once they got into sixth grade, it started going down, right? Because as they got older, their influences went from their school, from their parents, and it went to their peer groups, right? It's their friends,
That's
it's
true.
their people,
Yes.
it's the people that they hang out with, right? And so educator, right, or the pedagogue, my job is to infiltrate the peer group, right? My job is to build those relationships with the students authentically, right, naturally, right, and then use that agency, use that social capital to help that scholar, right? And so the best educators I've found are the ones that have the best relationship with their scholars. They know everything, right? The kids come to this educator, they, oh, Mr. Null, you know what happened to me, right? And then they just telling you, they talking to you, right? But if you don't infiltrate that peer group in a way where they allow you to do that, they're not going to have that outlet, right? Therefore, you're not going to get the information. Therefore, you might not be able to intervene because you don't have that access, right? But again, always going to the expert, the psychologist, the social worker. They have those skills, right? But as a teacher, you want to create an environment where kids are not creating dense networks within your class, if that makes any sense. You want to create an environment where kids are open to create a network with you that you can use to teach, that you can use to co-create, that you can use to build relationships and help scholars who are dealing with those tough things. But I'm gonna be honest with you, sometimes you don't. Sometimes you can't do it. You know, sometimes you will fail. Sometimes you might just need to report that, you know, scholar to the expert because it's just out of your control, right? So that's bittersweet.
Yes, I see what you're
I hope
saying.
I'm making sense to my doctors here because I'm definitely just trying to make sure.
No,
I'm saying
going.
the right things.
You talking as an expert, as a teacher, and you deal with them every day on a personal level, and kids have to look at you and say, he's for real. I can open up and I can share because he cares about me. You know, you see.
That is very important to know that someone cares. That is so true. Another thing I was thinking about instilling in the child is almost like a bill of rights or personal boundaries. You know, it's many times we teach kids about good touch and bad touch. You know, this is something that you need to report if someone does this to you. But also, there are such things as verbal assaults or even the peer pressure. So teaching that adolescence that, you know, you don't have to give away all of your belongings to be accepted into a group. Maybe that's not the right group for you if that's what you have to do to get into that group. You know, you have a right to your opinion, but also there is there's a tactful or kind way to express something, or even a boundary like learning how to say no to whatever the question may be and still be friends and still have the relationship. Skills like that teach the children or the adolescents how to navigate other relationships. You know, many children have that peer pressure and become involved in a situation that they just kind of went with the crowd.
Right.
But what if you teach your child to say, you know, I don't feel good about this, so I'm going to go home. Or, you know what, you guys are having a drink, but one day I want to, you know, have a certain job where I have to have a certain type of clearance. So I think I'm going to pass on that, you know, or you guys are smoking cigarettes, but I heard about that causing cancer. I'd like to be friends with you, but I can't smoke that cigarette. You know, giving your child the words to say, because a lot of times parents will say to the child, don't do that. Just say no, or make good choices. But sometimes if we can tell the child specifically, if you get in this situation, you know, this is specifically what you say, or this is how you can get out of it.
I just
or
wanted to
call
say
me,
this.
I will come and get you.
I just want to say that is for children or teams that have that kind of support, where the
Yes.
parent can communicate that and teach teach them to what to say and everything. But what about the children, Dr. Lowe and Calvin? What about the children that don't have that support and don't tell them the wrongs and the rights, and then they going through the adolescent stage and they having these feelings of their body changing sexually, and then they go and make the wrong choice and they go and molest a child because no one talked to them. Do you understand what I'm saying?
It's a difficult question because it's the equity piece, right? You know, we look through everything through the equality lens, but when we don't think with equity, we just think that everybody has the same problem.
No, everybody don't have. I know that everybody don't have the same problems.
Right? So it's really like, you know, it's hard. You know, it's a hard situation. But again, if you think with empathy, right, you put yourself in those person's shoes, then you always go to the expert, you know, and then you be there as support, as an educator, you know, as a spectator, as a professional. You know, that's the best thing. I won't say that's the best thing, but that's, you know, I would say that's the, you know, okay. Dr. Lowe?
Yes,
I think that's where it really does take a village to raise a child. I think every one of us need to keep our eyes on our kids, and so that in case a child doesn't have the resources, that we can be there for them. This is also why I'm a strong advocate or against charging a child as an adult.
Yes,
because
that's
they're
right.
not fully developed to even know the consequences of their decisions. And if they don't have adults to coach them, they are going to get into serious troubles. And they deserve to have a second chance, or a third even, right? And so I think there are also other structural issues that's in place that we adults need to address, and then not just put that burden on the child.
Right. Back to you, Dr. Lowe. Now, we dealing in this society where Trump was talking about Asian American, and then you have teenagers watching this on TV, and he's saying that, you know, they are the ones that gave the virus to the people in the United States. I wonder how the young teenage kids deal with that kind of pressure. Because it's hard enough for African American children to be going into stores and stuff and being accused of being someone who steals just because of their color. Do you all understand what I'm saying?
I have not had clinically have not had to address this issue, but I think if I were to, I would ask them, safety is always the first thing, right? To pay attention to your surrounding, and then not to be so quick to assume somebody's going to cause harm, but do have a vigilant eye. And also, again, we don't ever go alone. So be with a buddy or with somebody, and so that if you are in a dangerous situation, you can then ask for help. And the other thing is, and I think earlier we were talking about how do we give children the skills so that they can take care of themselves, so that words that they can have an impact on us, but how do we take care of ourselves so that it doesn't get to our core? Then those are the conversations that we can have so that people's words don't have a strong hold of our self-esteem.
Teach them skills, right? So go ahead, Lo.
Yeah, I was going to say that I have a client at 5 o'clock. I thought this was a half an hour program, so I may need to.
That's okay. You can dismiss yourself. We're glad to have you here. Also, give your name again and your information one more time before you leave us.
Okay, so my name is Xiaowen Lo, and you can reach me at my email address, info@drlowinannarbor.com, or you just Google Dr. Lowe in Ann Arbor. My website will pop up. And thank you for having me.
Yes.
Nice meeting you, Dr. Hubie and Calvin.
Very good to meet you too.
Have a good day. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Yes. Now we're getting ready to go now, and I just want to say thank you to you all we got 5 minutes. I want to say thank you so much for coming on the show, and anything that you have to say that's very pertinent for the listening audience to listen to, that you want to give. any pertinent information right now, you're free to do that. I got 5 minutes, so divide the time.
Thank you so much for having me on the show. Something that's resonating with me to say is each one teach one. Remember that? So even a nugget of time, just a short amount of time to say something positive to an adolescent can make a difference. A relationship that's ongoing and positive is desired and great to have with the adolescent child that you're trying to influence. But just don't forget that, any encounter, you can try to make it one where you are reaching that child and showing them something.
Absolutely. And again, it kept bringing up, it takes a village, right? I think we teach individualism too much, right? I, me, my grade, my score, my award, when it's really us, right? And so if we have an I and we mentality, when we're doing everything, when we're educating our kids, when we are teaching about politics, when we're thinking about the collective group, right? Because Detroit was able to turn this state blue because of the collective group. Atlanta was able to turn Georgia blue because of the collective group. So when we come in numbers, we're not only able to change the country, we're able to influence education, we're able to change this amazing city, right? Detroit is going, it's already beautiful, but it is going on an uphill, but that's because of the collective group. And so when we're talking about teaching our kids, we're talking about teaching our babies, it takes a village. And understand that village is only as strong as the organization. That village is only as strong as your ability to know that you don't know and we're willing to learn. But help, depend on each other. If you don't know, ask someone else, right? And do it together. I promise you'll be working a lot smarter and not as hard. So, yeah.
So I want to say thank you all for coming on the show, and hopefully you guys will join us again. But I want to say thank you so much.
Okay. Oh, thank you. It's okay.
You're welcome.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you so much for the time. Thank you for the platform.
All right. Thank you.